This is the last video for today's lesson. You're now going to watch a video about the executive producer role. It's called Tonight at 6. And of course, the executive producer runs a news show. You will have many executive producers, usually one for each show. So if you have the morning newscast, a noon newscast, and an evening newscast, an 11 o'clock newscast, that might be 3 or 4 different executive producers. Now understand that if you watch a film, like a movie, you will see the term executive producer for the big wigs that have a lot of money that are helping produce the actual film. They have a vision and so forth. That's a totally different role. Okay. The executive producer at a television news station is in charge of the actual newscast. So your job here is to create a list of 3 things that the producer does and a list of 3 challenges that he or she may face.
People depend on up-to-date news. To get the newest stories to the public, news producers and reporters must always stay on top of whatever is happening around the world.
Between producing a live local newscast and caring for a young son, Keiko Johnson's life is a juggling act. She spends her days working with a staff of reporters and other news producers to collect stories she feels her audience will benefit from. It's a responsibility she takes seriously, and one that keeps her on her toes as that all-important deadline approaches.
I need 6 in now. I don't care if it's too long. You gotta get it in. Bye. You ready for some breakfast? Yeah. That sounded like a yes.
My name is Keiko Johnson, and I produce the 6 o'clock news at NBC in Los Angeles.
Since the birth of their son Andrew just a year ago, Keiko and her husband Chris have had to adjust their lifestyles to fit their new family status.
Andrew, what's that? Banana. That's right.
I think being a working mom forces you to prioritize and figure out what needs to be done first. And I think overall I'm a lot more effective than I ever was before I had a baby.
And that includes getting a jump on the day's big news stories by scanning morning newspaper.
When I'm getting ready in the morning and I'm checking the newspapers to get updated on anything that may have happened since the 11 o'clock news the night before, and just being up on what the big stories of the day are, so that when I walk in, I kind of know what we're covering and I know what's going on.
Keiko arrives in the NBC4 newsroom as the morning newscast goes on the air. Her first order of the day is to write a tease briefly summarizing a story that she'll feature in her 6 o'clock newscast. The morning news anchors will then read Keiko's tease to entice viewers to tune in.
The first priority when I come in is to find stories for my show that are promotable and that we can put together in time for the 6. And so I try and find 2 stories right away that I can tease. Hey, can I have Atlantic Swimmer?
Yes, you may.
Oh.
Quickly, Keiko finds a story that she thinks will catch the viewer's attention. She types up a few sentences describing the story and sends it via computer to the newsroom downstairs.
Okay, so that tease is written.
Keiko got her start in the news business early on.
I volunteered to report for the college newspaper and kind of figured out that I really liked journalism.
Keiko not only fell in love with journalism, but also with the newspaper's editor-in-chief, Chris Johnson.
I look at my family and I try and think, whether or not these stories would be relevant to them, whether they interest them.
This morning, Keiko is promoting a story she thinks everyone will find interesting. Mere minutes after Keiko sends her tease down to the news desk, it's on the air.
And at 6, talk about endurance, a record across the Atlantic Ocean. But the record holder took the plunge after he finished crossing the ocean. We'll explain at 6.
Over lunch, Keiko meets with the producers of the 4 and 5 o'clock news to go over which of the day's big news stories each of them will feature and where these stories will be placed within their show.
What's the slug?
Hurricane.
Hurricane 4 p.m.?
Yes.
The 4 o'clock producer starts on first. He goes through what stories he wants, everything from reporters to little 20-second voiceover stories.
Lance Helms, VO. Sibling stab, VO. Decker credit card caper.
And then the 5 o'clock producer does the exact same thing. And then the 6 o'clock producer, which is me, usually I don't have to go through every little story because I'm the last show up. So I kind of have the luxury of just sitting back listening to the other two and then deciding what I want to put where.
Arco layoffs, chopper crash.
A lot of times the factors that determine where we put something is how important the story is and how many people it impacts. If it's something that's highly promotable and I know that you're going to find that so fascinating, you'll wait a half an hour to see that piece, I'll want to move it down because then it means I can keep you as a viewer longer by holding it till later.
I'm doing Hurricane, Healy, and Hensel.
Okay, so Healy's going to be live.
Healy's going to be live, Hensel's going to be at the wall probably, and I've got Kelly Mack on the Rose Queen as my showcase.
Okay.
So we're set.
As airtime gets closer and deadline pressure starts to hit, the mood changes and things get a little more frenzied, and any story that breaks, we're trying to get in as quickly as possible so that we're the first station on with stories as they happen.
How long would it take you to get to Pasadena? Oh, perfect.
Great.
You could talk to her on the phone and she'll... Perfect.
It's her quick thinking that has won Keiko the admiration of her co-workers.
I knew that the second I met Keiko that she was going to be great in this business. She's smart, she's enthusiastic, she has a real understanding of the concepts that makes news what it is and makes a good producer a good producer.
It's 10 minutes to 6 and time for Keiko to head downstairs to the studio where her newscast will be broadcast live.
Airtime is the best part of my day.
How does my animated box look?
Going on live is what we do. I mean, it's what we spend the whole day getting ready for, and it's the best part of my day.
3, 2, 1. Come up and cue.
Paul and Colleen, thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Kelly Mack.
And I'm Fernell Chapman in for Chuck Henry.
Our top story at 6 o'clock, Hurricane George is pummeling the Florida Keys and moves into the Gulf right now. Leanne Gregg is live in Naples, Florida with more on the wrath of George. Leanne, what's the latest there?
Kelly and Fernell here in Naples.
How long does this run?
Hey, Larry, I need a hammock.
139?
Advance it.
Going on the air live is not a job for the faint of heart. Throughout the half-hour newscast, Keiko must rearrange stories on the spot to keep the show running on time.
Hi, how heavy are we? 20 seconds heavy. Item 23 is dead. Fernell reads 24.
You budget a certain amount of time and a reporter tries to fit in, but if they've got a really great story, they're going to go long, and sometimes they're going to go really short. And so that's part of the juggling act, is going in there prepared to kill stories if you have to, or find stories at the last second if you need to. I mean, that's the job of the producer.
Confirming that 12 is dead, 11 is in. We switched the reads on 13 and 14.
Cool. Roll and go.
The half hour that we're on live is the best part of my day. It's what makes the whole job fun.
But it's also a job Keiko takes seriously.
A lot of times people criticize what we do and why we do it, but the fact is we are presenting information to people that we think they need to know. And the fact is we also want to build an audience and have as many people watching as we can, and that's part of our responsibility too.
Sosa hit number 66. How long ago?
One, take a,
I'll put that in the tees.
Ready?
Listen, that's going to replace Rose Queen in item 18. Okay? Thank you, bye.
Stand by, Colonel.
Okay, Benny, I need to let you know something really important. Sammy Sosa, there should be a tape that replaced Rose Queen. I replaced Rose Queen. EJ should have it loaded in that line. Sammy Sosa hitting a home run. You guys hear me?
When breaking news comes in, it's Keiko's job to keep everyone informed. Just minutes later, the new information is on the air.
Roll. Go, please.
Then it's happened again. Sammy Sosa has done it. He pulls into the lead in the home run race. You'll see it when we come back.
And thanks for making us your #1 choice for news at 6 o'clock.
Blackwood.
Thank you. Nice job, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Larry.
You never know when you walk in the morning what your day is going to hold, and you really never know at the end of your day when you go down to the booth for your show what your day is going to hold. So that's kind of what makes this job fun, is that it's always full of surprises and changes, and what makes the job so satisfying is that when it's over, it's over. You know, when your show is off the air, you've done it.
Did you know? People interested in careers in television must have strong skills in written and verbal communication. Employers prefer to hire producers who have worked on a school newspaper or yearbook or in some other form of media.
Okay, so you should have learned there that obviously the executive producer has a lot of challenges, that they face. Of course, their role is to be in touch with the news at all times. You saw here that she gets to work in the early afternoon for that 6 o'clock broadcast, but she's reading the news. She needs to know what their station has already covered. She needs to work with others to figure out, all right, we need to cover this story, but we need to do it in different ways. We need to be able to make sure we work with this reporter who's live on the scene. We need to get different live shots from that reporter. They call those hits. So the reporter will be out there, give a hit at 5 o'clock, and then at 5:30, and then at 6. But they need to be slightly different. People don't want to watch the same thing because they are hopefully carrying that same viewer through an hour and a half of news. Of course, so part of it is setting up the program. And then during the program is when it becomes really stressful. And as you saw there, exhilarating. And, the more you do something, the less stress there is, but you got to be ready for anything. That was a really great clip because they had to deal with Sammy Sosa hitting that home run. And so they decided to cut a story and add that story in. She even had to write it. So there's writing involved. And there's those decisions of cutting and adding stories to make sure you fit the time. So some of the challenges, obviously, working with others, getting something new, because again, you're going to have the same reporters out there going to give different hits. And so they have to come up with maybe a different angle. Another challenge is making sure you understand what all the stories are and having it flow together with the other shows. If you're at 6 o'clock, that's the big show because that leads right into the national newscast. So you need to understand what the other two newscasts have done. But of course, during the show, the biggest challenges are keeping it on time. So obviously some of the roles, some of the challenges are similar, but hopefully that gives you a good understanding of what the executive producer does. There is writing involved. They do write a lot. They write those teases. That's something else that a producer does, is write a tease for the newscast. They will even edit at times. They need to do the video editing. Well, they'll find the sound bite and find the video clip. Okay, so it's an interesting role. It's a great role to have if you don't want to be in front of a camera. You still need to be a journalist, and that's why I wanted to highlight that for you. So again, our purpose is to be an effective broadcast journalist, so you need to understand the roles there. And so we talked about what an assignment editor is and an executive producer.